Hello, everybody. My name is Jasmine Rule, and today I want to talk about a New Zealand news story that has come to the forefront of people's minds and debate. So, this story is focused around the Christchurch massacre, which happened 2 years ago. So, basically, when I read this story, I was quite unsure about how I should feel or what my opinion on the matter was, and to a certain extent I didn't really understand the whole situation. I think because I don't currently live in New Zealand, so the Christchurch massacre and the events and everything around it isn't as close to home as it would be if I was in New Zealand. But anyway, it's a developing story and controversy around a proposed film that is supposed to be being made about the terrorist attack that happened in Christchurch 2 years ago. So, as most people would know, there's a mosque in Christchurch. There's a couple of different ones, I think. And there was a terrorist from Australia who had moved to New Zealand and planned to carry out this terrorist attack on the Muslim community in New Zealand. And he was successful in that. He live streamed the whole thing and he killed a lot of people, 51 people to be exact. Now, making a film about events like this isn't unusual. Lots of people have seen Bowling for Columbine, the documentary about the Columbine massacre, which focuses on the wider issue of gun control in America and how easy it is to buy guns and everything like that. So, to make a film, specifically a documentary, I've read that it's supposed to be a documentary, isn't out of the ordinary. So when I read about this news story, I wasn't surprised or upset because it seems like a really normal thing to do, and documentaries about events can be really informative and can, I suppose, be a positive thing in society because people can watch it, and if it's well thought out and well produced, people can have a better understanding of the specific events that led up to it, and hopefully so that it doesn't happen again, right? So those were like my initial thoughts on when I saw the headlines, right? But what I didn't realize was that the terrorist attack was only 2 years ago. Like, ever since Corona has hit, everything before Corona feels like it was like 5 years ago or whatever. So when I read that it was only 2 years ago, I was like, yeah, that's really not very much time, because I would imagine that anybody who has lost a family member or friends in such a traumatic way, with hate and violence, that I wouldn't even imagine that everybody has accepted the death of their loved ones, like, I would imagine that a lot of people would still be struggling with that. So it seems like then having to deal with the fact that there's a documentary or a film being produced about those events would be such a big struggle, because, like, just imagining if my brother or parents were killed in such a horrific way, I don't think that 2 years would be enough time to even really come to terms with the fact that they weren't around, and the way in which they died. I just don't think that I would even be in a place of being able to acknowledge that they were dead. So yeah, reading about, realizing that it's only been 2 years really made me feel quite a bit different. So then there's also the other aspect that it's supposed to be a documentary. And if that's true, that it's meant to be a documentary, how... Obviously, I don't know how much time it takes to research everything for a documentary, but I would think that it would take at least a year or so to gather enough information, to interview people, to to just build up enough documentation to be able to put forward the idea of a film. So that makes me wonder, like, when was this idea put together? If it takes, a year to pull together all the information, does that mean that they were planning this documentary a year after the massacre? Like, that seems really in bad taste. And if that isn't the case, then I would argue that they wouldn't have enough information to put together a documentary. Like, if they have only just... I would hope that they had only just decided to do a documentary now, and then I would say, like, well, then you need to, like, spend another year to put together all this information. So, like, why would this even be, a possibility right now? So it's kind of concerning to me that it's already going to be this film. Like, excuse me, like, did you spend enough time to do all the research? And if you have done that, then why was it that after 1 year, after, an incredibly violent and hateful incident, you were already thinking about monetizing it? Like, that seems really off. So that leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, and also makes me a little bit concerned about, how thorough this documentary is going to be, and if they have done enough research and background into all of it. So yeah, that's another aspect that I think is important to think about when people are discussing this. So there were some things that I thought were a little bit unfair towards the backlash against the documentary, which was, first of all, that some people were saying that at the time, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, she hadn't said anything against the documentary, and somebody was saying that they think that her not saying anything was her co-signing the documentary, like saying that it's okay. And I think that that is not really the way that people should necessarily look at things, because it's not always black and white like that. Like, just because you haven't said anything against something doesn't mean that you're for it. And to be honest, when you're a politician, you do have to be really careful with, what you spend your time talking about and the ways in which you talk about things. So I wouldn't really expect, the Prime Minister to necessarily have even formulated any thoughts or opinions about it at that time, and I don't really think that it's fair to, expect everyone to have a strong opinion about it. But since I read that article, she has now said that it's not the time to be making any sort of documentary or anything about it. So now she has criticized it, but I still think it's relevant that, we shouldn't be jumping on people because they haven't said that they're against something. So the third aspect of the documentary that has come under a lot of criticism, and I agree, but maybe to a different extent. So people are upset because the description of the documentary is that it's focusing on the Prime Minister and her response to the terrorist attack. So that is... The criticism is that it should be focused on the victims. Now, I think that yes and no. I think that there should definitely be something that focuses on the victims, but I don't think that that excludes something that focuses on the Prime Minister. Like, I think that there isn't anything inherently wrong in making a documentary about, the governmental response to the terrorist attack. But I understand that it would be, it's almost disrespectful to not have something that focuses on the victims. So I think that, if there was already something in the works, or, I mean, it's kind of difficult because it still is too early, but like, let's say it's 10 years from now. If there was a documentary and documented stories of the victims and their families, then I think that it wouldn't be strange to then have a documentary produced about the governmental response to the terrorist attack. So I understand the argument there, but I also don't think that it would be necessarily a bad thing for there to be a documentary about Jacinda Ardern and her response to the terrorist attacks. But I do agree that, like, it depends on the cultural situation at the time. Like, if there has already been a film or documentary about the victims, then I think that it would be appropriate to have that. So, but the other element that I think is really, a criticism against the documentary is that, like, I think that it's really strange that you would make a documentary about a prime minister who's still in office and their response to the terrorist attack. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems really strange to make a film or something about somebody who's still in office. Because, like, okay, so it's been 2 years, but that's not really enough time to see, like, the longevity effect of the response, surely. Because let's say next year, Jacinda Ardern comes out with some policy that all of a sudden, makes people really hate Muslims, like, that could still happen. Like, she's still in office. She still has, power and authority to do something that could change how, her response is perceived, right? Like, this story isn't over. She's still in office. So I don't think that it seems really stupid to make a documentary about a still sitting parliamentary leader, and it's not like she's a dictator who's possibly still going to be in office in 10 years. Like, there's a limit on how long she can be in office. So, like, can you not wait to, like, see how the policies and statements that she's made have affected, the whole of New Zealand? Like, can you just not wait? So that part to me is probably, like, the biggest reason why I kind of think that this documentary is really stupid. Like, it's culturally insensitive, by being too soon. Is culturally insensitive by focusing on, not the people who are directly involved, and there not being that, not, since there isn't, a documentary that is already produced, that should be produced first, I would think. And then, like, the third major thing is that, you're focusing on someone who could still make major changes that, affect how this event is perceived, and, the longer cultural impact on, the Muslim community and, the wider New Zealand community. Like, it just seems really ridiculous. So there are other elements, I'm sure, like this is an unfolding story, so I'm sure that I will probably make a little bit more videos about this just because there seems to be like more and more information coming out all the time. Like the whole Prime Minister coming out against the documentary. They just came out today. So, anyway, I will update my thoughts and opinions. I did read one comment that said, you know, how can you be against this documentary? Like, shouldn't we wait and see this documentary before we make our final thoughts and opinions? And to be honest, that is a fair and good stance, and that's kind of the stance that I had when I first read the headlines. But I can't really get over that it's only been 2 years. That part to me is kind of a bit of a deal breaker. So, you know, but I do understand those thoughts and feelings. So, you know, if you think and feel that way, I totally understand it. But just like for me, you know, in my heart, it's difficult to get over that fact. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will come out with an update once I've read, you know, some more things about it. And I'm assuming in the next coming week there's going to be, you know, more people sharing their thoughts and feelings. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I'll see you guys all next time. Hey door.